Okay. So we were discussing about the lesson that is environment management. Okay. And we had started with the introductory part, starting from the scratch or the very basic, that is what is environment, right? Why it is significant, and what are the different components of the environment. Okay. We have discussed some basic concepts with respect to food chain, food webs. All of you remember all those points properly?
Yes.
Yes, we
Yes.
have seen the different trophic levels, right? So this lesson, it is named as environment management. So we have to understand about every aspect of the environmental studies in this lesson, right? So this statement from which we can begin today, this was told by the father of the nation. You know very well that the earth is sufficient enough to satisfy everyone's need, but not the greed. Do you agree with this, everyone?
Yes.
Yes. So if I ask a
Yeah.
very simple question, what are the basic needs of man? What are the basic needs of man?
Food, shelter.
Food, shelter.
Food, shelter,
Shelter,
clothes.
clothing. Correct. These are the three basic needs of man, and these are going to remain the basic needs always. When you say basic needs, it means these are the needs which are required so that any human being can survive on the earth, right? Because any organism, the first important requirement is that the organism must survive. Only when the organism survives, so beyond the basic needs, the organism can think about the other needs also. Correct? So if I ask you this way, for human beings, besides food, shelter, and clothing, a good network, is it a basic requirement? You can't say no actually for this, right? Yes, nowadays that is also has become a very important basic requirement, right? For a day or two, if you don't get food, it's fine, but you need network. Am I right? Correct? Okay, but there's one thing that all the requirements that we have, okay, if you say food now, food ultimately comes from a plant source or an animal source, correct? Even if it is from an animal source, we use the word non-vegetarian for that. So ultimately the animals are also dependent on the plants, correct? So it's like in terms of food chain, we can understand that. So if you say that you are a non-vegetarian, you eat fish, so a fish ultimately also depends on plants. So if there are plants, then the animals can survive, and that's how a food chain can progress, correct? So all these necessities which are necessary for our survival on the earth is ultimately there in the earth itself. We don't have any resource which is coming outside the earth. We are dependent on whatever things on the earth, including the most important thing, that is the water, correct? When we breathe, the air that we take in while breathing contains mainly oxygen, and that is what is required for our respiration. So that again is there on the earth. And plants are the only components which are able to keep a balance of these gases, carbon dioxide and oxygen both. And it is because of plants that there is replenishment of the oxygen taking place on the earth, correct? So all these processes which are taking place on the earth are able to keep a balance of everything, but the imbalance started when human beings came into picture. Do you agree with that? Correct. We have caused major levels of imbalance. The most commonest word that we use, and that is pollution, correct? These are some of the scenarios which you very commonly see around you, right? You see factories, they have tall chimneys,
Yes.
correct? So what happens to the tall chimneys? There are all sorts of toxic gases released into the environment. So as a layman, do you think it's a good thing to do?
No.
No. So then what is the solution? Stop emitting gases? Is it possible for an industry, or they should keep all the gases
No.
inside the factory itself? What do you think they can do? Yes.
They should move far away from human settlements.
Okay, they can keep their industries away from the residential areas, but ultimately they will be on the earth itself. Can they establish any factory outside the earth? नहीं, है ना? किसी इंडस्ट्री का ऐसा एड्रेस नहीं होगा ना, जुपिटर क्रॉस रोड, सैटर्न लिमिट, right? So ultimately it is on the earth, and whatever it is emitted from there, if not directly to the residential areas, but somewhere or the other they will find a way to the human beings. Even if it is away from residential areas, there are people working in the factories and they are exposed to those gases, correct? And if not human beings, there are other organisms which are getting affected by these gases. So there is no end to this discussion, correct? Okay, when the emissions from the factories take place, ultimately there is pollution taking place, and all sorts of harmful gases are released into the environment. So carbon dioxide, oxides of nitrogen, sulfur dioxide, right? These are the major polluting gases. And you all know very well, you must have studied a lot about pollution till now. What happens to these gases when they're directly released into the environment, right? There are effects like acid rains, correct? They cause increase in the temperatures of the earth. So we are aware about something called global warming that is happening, right? Greenhouse effect. So one thing leads to another. The major point is that like this kind of a discussion, when we start, it is going to be endless, right? So you have studied all most of it, but one thing which is caused is that there is no one effect of this thing. Like we are seeing that the gases are being emitted. So it's not that the effect of that will be only on plants or only on animals. It will be on all of them, and that effect will always be passed on. It won't be fixed at one place. So it's like if animals are infected or if plants are infected, we human beings are dependent on plants and animals. So even if the residential areas are away, but we are dependent on the plants and animals over there. If not anything else, we are dependent on the air for breathing, and that air contains the oxygen, correct? So all these impacts we are going to observe. Secondly, this is a situation you must have seen everywhere around you. The second picture. Yes. What can you tell about this picture? This second, anywhere in India, you must have seen this, right? What can you tell about this picture? What can be the reason for this kind of a situation? Yes. Is it completely unavoidable, or there can be some solution to this? Bolo, come on, interact. This one I'm telling. You can see my cursor, right? The second picture. Bolo. What do you think is the reason for this? Yes, Harsha. इस तरह के नाले वगैरह बहुत देखने को मिलते हैं ना, even in our town, everywhere. It's a very common situation, especially in the developing nations. So what is the reason behind this? Today we have a celebrity student with us, Shiv Ganga, after a long time. How are you? Yes, anybody? Come on, speak up. Bolo. What can you tell? What can you comment upon for this second picture? Don't be silent. Come on. It's not that you don't know something. It's not very technical. Bolo, Abhirami, Dipali. Abhirami is sitting as if she's watching a movie. बस हाथ में popcorn नहीं. Yes, Abhirami. I want you to speak up, interact. Come on. Bolo, whatever you know, you can tell. There's nothing called right or wrong in this. It's your opinion I'm asking. Harsha, bolo. What is the most common culprit for this kind of a situation? Yes, one, say we are talking about pollution over here. So सबसे ज़्यादा dangerous चीज जो आज के ज़माने में है, and that is plastic. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Especially the plastic which is called as a one-time use plastic. है ना? For example, practically considering it, like you go out to buy something, say vegetables, fruits, or something like that. Okay, so what is the best option? Like, should you take a plastic from the vendor, plastic pouch, or do you think you should carry something with you? Shivganga, you're not audible.
Carry something.
Yes, you must carry something. So what kind of bag you can carry something with you?
Cloth bags. Cloth jute.
Correct. Cloth bag, jute bag, which you can reuse and recycle. There are the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce means, first of all, avoid. See, whenever human beings are there, whenever life is going on, you cannot say that you will make a zero waste or something. Waste to hoga hi. Any type of a waste will be generated, but how you manage that waste is the most important. That is in our hands. So as far as possible, you can reduce the amount of waste. A simple example, like you use pen for writing. So pen दो तरह के मिलते हैं. One type is that use and throw. 2 rupees, 3 rupees के जो आते हैं ना छोटे. You cannot change the refill in that. You just have to buy it, use it, and throw it away. And the other type is where you can replace the refill. Which one do you think is the better option?
Replacing the refill.
Okay, why?
Replacing the refill.
Yes, why?
Because we use one pen and we replace the refill.
So we are trying to reduce the amount of waste. Correct. Imagine another example, like we use cosmetic shampoos and all. ठीक है, तो शैम्पू अपने को पूरा बड़ा बॉटल मिल जाता है, और we can have 1 or 2 rupees का sachets. Which one do you think is a better option?
Bottle.
Sachets avoid करना चाहिए. Because what happens when you use sachets? It's the same brand, maybe same shampoo, everything will be same. Sachets use करने में और bottle use करने में, what is the difference? Come on.
Bottle can be reusable, or it will be only one plastic bottle. And sachets, there will be many plastics and it can't be reused.
Correct. So it's like, suppose if you buy a normal average sized bottle, so that shampoo one can use it say around 10 to 12 times approx, depending upon the quantity and all, right? But that sachet, if you buy, you're using it only once, and that too you're throwing it away. And the other big problem is that it's not just about plastic. It is one more thing which is related to it, and that is called microplastic. These are some very practical things which normally people neglect in today's life. It's like, imagine you buy a small sachet. Okay, consider this to be a sachet. You cut it like this. Correct? ऐसे cut करते side में, and then you use the contents. So when you cut it like this, there is a small piece generated. You throw it away. That's called microplastic. Imagine even milk pouch. You cut a small part of it because you just have to pour out the milk, or any other such product that you use. So that small cut pieces which come out, उनको microplastic. And usse bhi zyada what happens is, when these are like say physically broken into very tiny pieces, when you throw it away like this, they are called microplastics. And some of the microplastics are not even visible with the naked eye. They are so tiny. So when they find their way into water bodies like this, what happens is the aquatic animals like fishes, turtles, these animals, they ingest this plastic. Even when people consume water from these water bodies, even these microplastics can find their way into your systems. And that is very, very dangerous. So this plastic thing that we are talking about, it is not just restricted to the big plastic pouches and all which are easily seen. The hidden danger is about the microplastic. So that's the reason it is said there are small changes which you need to do in your daily life, and you can avoid the amount of the wastage. Like as Dipali said, okay, shampoo. If I buy a bottle of it, so I am ensuring that for next 10 to 15 uses, I don't need to buy shampoo again. And once the bottle gets empty, I can send it for recycling. Sachets mein recycle nahi bech sakta. It just goes and finds its way into the dump yard, and then it is a problem. So these are some examples in our daily life which we can change, okay, and we can avoid the amount of waste generation and erratic disposal of the waste. Now, what is this concept is there? Like this third picture, if you see the one below, this is also a common scenario in many of the Indian roads. Correct? You can see background में देखो कितना अच्छा नजारा है, and ये सामने देखना क्या है. So if you are standing in such a place, will you sit and admire this one or the one at the background? Of course, you look at the background picture. This green grass and there is a mountain you can see. See how the landscape is getting aesthetically damaged. So that's again a big thing. No doubt, that's just about the aesthetic part, but otherwise health problems are also there. When during the rains and all, see how the dustbin is overflowing. Imagine during the rains, this will attract animals like stray dogs. That's another problem. So it's like the problem is not, the effect of the problem is not just one after the other. There are many problems which come up. This can become a breeding ground for mosquitoes, leading to spread of diseases. So many things one after the other. So you can avoid this. Correct. So there are many things in our daily life which we can actually avoid. Getting it? If you are traveling somewhere, you can always carry your own bottles rather than trying to buy plastic bottles. Only in an emergency, unavoidable situation, that's a different. But as far as possible, you can plan and you can avoid that wastage. You are traveling by long distance trains. There is a habit among the people most of the time. You have the tea, coffee, or you have food or whatever. Things are thrown outside the window. Is it a good thing to do? You see the railway tracks in any part of our country. Lots of paper cups, paper, plastic, everything is discarded very badly. Because in India, there is a common tendency, anything outside the window is allowed. So as a learned person, we are not supposed to do this. Correct? The best thing is dispose of the waste at the right place in a right manner. So you can avoid many things. Okay, because ultimately all these things, they find their way into the dumping ground. And dumping grounds are one of the worst things because it's only a place where you're dumping all the waste and it only keeps increasing. In Bombay, there is a dumping ground which has reached the height of a 20-story building. Imagine. 20 माले का building मतलब you can imagine how big it must be and उतना हमने कचरा जमा किया. Do you think we can call it as an achievement? Of course not, right? Imagine what the future generations are going to see. कि हमारे पूर्वजों ने हमारे लिए कचरा जमा करके रखा है. So one has to understand that, correct? And especially what has happened is in the past many years, there is a very drastic development in the packaging technology. That's the reason the amount of waste has increased like anything. You see all sorts of food items, packaged biscuits, chips, ये सब जो खाते हैं ना, fruit juices सब tetra pack में आते हैं. So many things, everything is in plastic. You visit any general store and take a look. There are wrappers of chips, biscuit, everything hanging over there. देखा रहेगा. People buy them, they pay for it, no problem. But waste कहाँ जाता है? Imagine you buy a bar of soap, the wrapper goes into the dustbin. तो इतना सब कुछ अगर जा रहा है तो nature में it is just getting dumped. It is only getting added. There is nothing else going on. When plastic thing was not invented, उसके पहले भी तो लोग ये सब यूज करते थे ना. Milk used to come in glass bottles. There was packaging in plants के leaves में packing करते थे. Correct? So all those things have gone. Okay, so all these things must be avoided. This one, the fourth picture, if you see, can you tell what is this? This one. ये क्या है बताओ? Have you heard about something called oil spill?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? There are
Yes.
ships and oil tankers traveling by sea. When they get a crash or when they, what you can say, get any leakage, so there is spillage of the oils and all into the water. So you know very well when oil is mixed with water and they actually don't mix, so the oil remains at the top. Imagine what will happen to the aquatic organisms in the water. And it's not just one or few liters of oil in it, it is tons and tons of oil which are discharged into the waters. So that's a big problem. Many fishes and all, their bodies are completely covered with oil. They don't know what to do. They suffocate. There are turtles who are suffering. Plants, leaves and all are there, completely covered with oil. They cannot do photosynthesis. Entire food chain is affected. And that's a very bad thing. Getting it? So these are all ultimately the reason for all this to happen is human beings. These are not natural problems. So if we are the creators of the problem, we must find a solution. Correct? There has to be some regulation to all this. So when all these things started, initially people were not taking these things so seriously. The impacts were not so visible maybe. Okay, before the industrial revolution, the air, water, soil was very pure. But then because of the advent of technology, all these things started. Getting it? Are you aware about something called radioactive pollution?
Yes.
Yes.
Right? Radioactivity. There are harmful radiations which are released. Okay, alpha, beta, gamma rays, and these radiations are something which are first of all invisible, and they can cause long-lasting damage. So there are nuclear power plants which are created in order to generate electricity out of nuclear energy. We have that another lesson called towards green energy. उसमें हम लोग देखेंगे nuclear power plant. Okay, but for now just understand this, that from nuclear energy, electricity generated in a nuclear power plant, and in such a power plant, if at all there is any disaster, it can lead to dangerous conditions. So this one Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine, which happened in 1986, this was one of the major disasters. The effects are still there. Like this, you can learn about Windscale disaster and 3 Miles Island disaster also. There's one more called Fukushima Daiichi disaster in Japan. So nuclear power plants suffered those leakages. And there was a very bad damage which happened everywhere. So these disasters are well known in history. There is actually a movie also based on this, Chernobyl. Okay, whenever you get the time, watch that movie. It has shown everything, how that disaster happened, why it happened, okay, what were the effects. Okay, all those points you can see. So such movies will make you understand the actual thing because they are shown live, no? The Chernobyl movie dekhna so. Okay, it is shown very nicely. So these are radioactive pollution that happens, and as compared to air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, this is much beyond control. Because if radiation leaks into the environment, it cannot be controlled. You can clean the water, you can clean the air to some extent, but radioactivity ko kaise clear karna? That's why it has got very long lasting effects and the damage is disastrous. People simply lose their lives. Okay, so you have to read about all these disasters and learn about it. Okay, then okay, so what kind of measures, when we discuss about pollution, it's a never ending story, obviously, and there's the more you discuss, the less it is, obviously, right? So the only thing is that, see, there is one important term I would like to introduce to all of you, that is called as carbon footprint. Remember that word. Okay, carbon footprint करके बोलते हैं. What is that? You know, कि whatever activity you do in daily life, any activity. For example, at present, you are sitting in front of your devices and listening to this lecture. I am sitting in front of my device and giving this lecture. So I am using some energy. You all are using some energy. The common energy source is electricity. You require good network. That is also a source of energy. Correct? And the device is made up of something, maybe a mobile phone, laptop, or whatever. but it is made up of some material that has come from the nature. Okay, so all these things, any such activity when you do in your daily life, you are using some or the other natural resource, and there is some amount of emission that is given out because of it. So the amount of emission that you are giving out due to any such activity has to be compensated by the number of plants that you grow. It's like, for example, just a random example, that you are doing a particular activity and you're releasing certain amount of carbon dioxide. Emissions we compare generally in terms of carbon dioxide. So say, for example, you're releasing 5 kilograms of carbon dioxide. So in order to absorb that much amount of carbon dioxide from the air, you need to plant some number of plants, maybe herbs, shrubs, trees, whatever, so that you have released so much carbon dioxide. At the same time, you have planted so many trees so that that much amount of carbon dioxide is neutralized. So it's ultimately the overall net effect is that you have not caused that pollution at all. That is the concept of carbon footprint. Okay, like ultimately there is a carbon footprint calculator. I will try and find it out. It's just an Excel data sheet. If it is available, I will pass it on in the group. All of you can fill your own respective data. Okay, like the data is quite simple based on what kind of transportation you use. Okay, how much electricity you use, what kind of cooking gas do you use. In sabka data lagega. According to that, your carbon footprint is calculated. Okay, at your own individual level, how much pollution you are causing. So if one is aware about one's own footprint calculator, you can understand which are the places where you can reduce that emission. Okay, there are obviously a lot of things in our daily life where we can reduce. It's like, imagine you are sitting at home, the weather is good enough. Okay, still you have left all your windows closed and turned on the AC. So do you think that's an environmentally correct option?
No.
No. So a ceiling fan and an air conditioner, which one is a better option?
Ceiling fan.
Ceiling fan.
Ceiling fan from environment point of view. No doubt AC makes you very comfortable. But AC में बहुत ज़्यादा emission है, because when the room temperature inside it gets cooled, there is hot gas which is released outside. AC का जो outlet होता है ना, वहाँ खड़े है कि देखो कभी गर्म हवा लगता है ना. Imagine that hot air is released into the air. So there is a immediate effect on the temperature, right? So that is the carbon footprint which is getting increased. Getting it? So all these things were taken into account, okay, including your daily usage of cooking purposes, transportation, entertainment, your residence, everything is taken into account, and how much energy you actually use. Okay, that is called carbon footprint calculator. So you can get an idea, like at your level, how many things you can actually reduce. Okay. Similarly, like there are many such programs and activists and movements and organizations at the state level, at the national level, at the international level. Like as and when people started realizing that the environment is getting degraded day by day, mainly due to human activities. So there has to be some regulation to it. Those regulations are decided specifically by some or the other such organization, or some programs are generated so that people come to know. The problem is that these problems to the environment is happening, but many of the people are not even aware about this. Finding solution will come only when people will get aware na ki हाँ ऐसा कुछ problem हो रहा है. Getting it? So in order to create awareness, lots of such movements and activities are held and they go on. Okay, so we will discuss about this programs, activities and all in this coming session. Okay,